Hey, everybody, and welcome to this episode of Transit Tangents. My name's Lewis.
And I'm Chris.
And today we're going to talk about something a little bit different. So I actually saw a video by somebody we've interviewed on the channel before, Noah from the YouTube channel Streetcraft. And he, in the video, is talking about what a better suburb could look like, which is a theme he's kind of talked about on his channel quite a bit. But he lays out a very beautiful example of what the future of suburbs could look like to solve a whole litany of issues that he kind of lays out. I do want to kind of lay out a few of the issues at the start here, just so that folks know what we're talking about, because this isn't necessarily a super transit focus at the start, but we're going to tie this into transit and how the suburbs could be better. The suburbs of the future could be better served by transit, because the suburbs of today are very difficult to serve by transit.
And I'd say most people who are interested in transit as a whole are interested in sort of urban planning and what the suburbs, how we can improve them.
Right.
Because as we sort of built away from our gridded systems and we started building cul-de-sacs and roads at dead end and curvy roads and all this stuff, we sort of shot ourselves in the foot for future improvements to our cities.
Totally. And that's kind of one of the main examples that Noah points to in the video is the kind of connectivity issues. So obviously when you build these windy suburbs with cul-de-sacs, like you pointed out, dead ends, many of these suburbs are fully gated in. It can make it so that what should be like a 2-minute walk to get from one place to the other is actually like a 10-minute drive or a 40-minute walk or something crazy when you're zigzagging yourselves out of these places. So that's a major issue. Part of it is just the amount of space that some of these suburban developments take up, big yards, long driveways, the density of single family homes. You can only fit so many people in a certain area. And when you're just outside of a major metro, is that the best use of the space? Serving those areas by public transit when you have these windy roads, having a bus route run through windy neighborhoods that take forever to drive through and that are not dense at all is never going to make any sense. It's not going to be fast. It's not going to be anywhere close to profitable. Not that I think all transit needs to be profitable. You run into issues with tax revenues. A single family home on a piece of land is going to generate a lot less tax revenue than a multifamily home even, or a fourplex or something might, which ends up using a pretty similar amount of city services when you're talking about sewer pipes and water pipes. So you're basically needing to maintain these places with less tax revenue.
You end up subsidizing the suburban development by your more dense parts of town.
Right.
So another reason why cities are trying to densify in their core is because we have this budget deficit between how far cities have expanded out and how much additional, like you said, additional services, water and fire and all of these transit services that we try to utilize, garbage pickup, all of these things. It costs a lot of money, and as the city keeps expanding out to these suburban areas, the suburban areas can't financially support these services. Suburbs are kind of bankrupting our cities.
Right.
So how can we make them better, add more people in, densify them, have better transit services in a way that is really financially responsible for these communities,
while also still providing folks with the benefits that living in a suburb can offer, actually, because there's also a reason why they exist. People do like living in those areas, or they wouldn't buy those homes. Now, some people buy those homes further out because that's all they can afford, and that's one area where that's not the best situation for them to be in. But that's you keep driving until you can afford a house, or keep driving until you qualify, I think is especially there's a Houston thing in particular. Just keep driving till you qualify for a mortgage for a home. But there is a better design, and rather than getting into the design that Noah laid out in his video, which again you should watch it after this, he does a great job of laying some of this stuff out and kind of creates a fully idealized version of what it could be. Instead of looking at that, I had biked by this a couple times, but there is actually a little development only a couple miles from where both of us live, called The Grove in Austin. And while it's not technically its own suburb, it's within the city limits, it is a really good example of what I think suburbs could look like in the future. And is it perfect? No, but I just think that this was a good use of the space. And for some context, this was like a greenfield development. There was nothing there previously. I read that at one point the land had been sitting there to be used for a cemetery at some point. I'm glad we're not using it for a cemetery and instead are using it to house a whole bunch of people. But
there's something really interesting about taking this
Actually, we were
land.
going to house people, I guess, but
Yeah, it's really interesting. We're taking this land, and instead of housing dead people, we're just housing the living.
yeah,
So probably a better use of space.
yes, 100% a better use of space. But anyway,
Sorry to all the dead listeners. Okay.
yes, yeah. The Grove is doing something interesting though, where it's utilizing the space to fulfill a whole bunch of different housing needs. So all consistent within the Grove, you've got single family homes, you have townhomes, you have what they called stacked condos, which are basically like bigger apartments that you can buy versus rent. There are traditional apartments that you can rent. And kind of a couple of things in between. It seems like there's some duplexes, quadplexes, whatever, insert your name for whatever you call them here. Yeah. It's a diversity of different housing all within a very small footprint that you can all walk between. On the space, they've also included room for restaurants, there's gyms, there's a small grocery store, there are parks, all sorts of things. And one of the parks is actually 16 acres. Yeah. And I hadn't gone through the whole development before, and I went and rode my bike through there yesterday. And the nice park, it's a beautiful park space. Mm-hmm. They've also constructed a bridge for bikes and pedestrians that connects to one of the major north-south bike routes in the city.
I'm really excited for that.
Yeah, so it's a good diversity of things all in this one place.
And arguably, that's what suburbs should be. They should meet multiple housing needs.
Right.
And right now, they only serve single-family housing.
Right.
But suburbs should also include apartments and condos and duplexes and should be available for anybody.
Right. And by taking all of these different housing types and putting them on this smaller footprint, you're still offering the single family homes to the folks who wanted them, albeit at a higher price, which we'll get into. But you're kind of making the math work on the city services end of it by mixing in all of these other things. And you're also giving the folks who have the single family home the benefits of having a single family home, which is their yards aren't huge here, but they all have small backyards. You're having your own building, so if noise is a concern, you don't want to share a wall with somebody. You're getting those benefits, but you're not getting the downsides of living in the center of this development that takes 15 minutes just to get out of.
Yep.
You're getting the benefit of being able to walk to a park, to walk to a grocery store, to walk to a restaurant.
And I would argue the vast majority of people, and I know not everybody, but the vast majority of people would prefer to live in a place where they could walk a couple minutes to a local cafe,
right,
or to a convenience store, or to some place other than their yard,
right,
to reach some type of service.
Yeah, absolutely. And a couple things that they do in and around this development that I wanted to point out. And some of these are still under construction because this is brand new. There's still a section that actually hasn't started construction on it yet. So there'll be more coming. There's road construction happening. But they've put in protected bike lanes through a stretch of the road, and there are more protected bike lanes coming to help connect this into the rest of the system. I mentioned the bike and pedestrian bridge that's connecting to, if you live in Austin, it's connecting to Shoal Creek Boulevard, which is a bike path that Adam mentioned in the episode with him. He knows the resident in that area who actually fought to make that bike lane possible. She fighted to make that bike lane possible. She fighted so hard. That was anyway. It's well connected on the bike network, which is nice. There is an effort on the transit side, so the area is served by a transit route that does connect into downtown and points south as well. The service on it isn't perfect, but there are 2 stops that have been recently rebuilt, and I think there's more coming to those stops that very easily serve that whole area. So all of these homes can be served by these transit stops on the 30. Again, frequency could be improved, but they, even within the development itself, there's lots of good just third spaces where I just kind of walking through some of them, lots of plants and greenery, little courtyards, small pocket parks and whatnot mixed in. that just like create places that you want to hang out in.
Yeah. And this definitely isn't the first type of development like this in Austin.
These things exist.
These things exist all over. Yeah. But it is a good example. Two that I don't want to spend a lot of time talking about, but two similar developments in my mind in Austin for anybody who's from here. Hey, Gondola Gang, thank you so much for listening to this episode. We're going to jump right back in just a second. But first, if you like what you're hearing, we just want to make sure that you are hitting that subscribe button.
Like the video if you haven't done so already. And we also love reading your comments, so please leave a comment. If you're listening, please consider giving us a rating, preferably 5 stars. I hope you think we deserve it, but I'll let you be the judge of that.
I'll take forward the comment. They're kind of on two extremes. Yeah. One is the domain, which is pretty much all commercial. There's no single family housing, but there are a mix of different types of apartments and condos within the domain complex. The downside of that is you feel like you're living in a shopping center because you are living in a shopping center.
Yes.
But then the other one is the redevelopment of the old Mueller Airport, which was Austin's municipal airport before it moved to ABIA. And that is the Mueller development, which has sort of different districts within that development. You have a more dense sort of big box store district with things like a
Best Buy
and Home Depot and all that,
Sprouts,
the Starbucks and you have a big section like that, and there's a hospital complex, and then you have a lot of single family homes that are detached. You have a lot of single family homes that are
townhome style
that are connected. You have condos, you have apartments, you have a really wide mix of different housing units within this development. So I'd say it's kind of like a much larger version of the Grove.
Yes.
Whereas the Grove is a much more
smaller footprint.
Yeah, smaller footprint. And is a lot more like park and amenity focused.
Yeah. And I think the Grove, Mueller and the Grove are more similar than the Domain in the sense like the Domain feels like it's lacking some character and whatnot, in my opinion, in a lot of areas. Obviously, it's a shopping mall.
I'm gonna get some shit from people for this, but there's a lot of stickers you'll see around Austin that are like, "Don't Dallas my Austin."
Yeah.
The Domain is you've Dallas Austin.
Yeah. But Mueller does a good job in a lot of cases of having like good green spaces and trees and some common things that I found in the Grove and that I've seen in Mueller that Noah mentions in his videos are. Instead of having driveways in front of the kind of more row home style, townhome style, to save on space, you end up with these little alleys behind them. And it leaves you with streets that are more friendly. You're not just crossing driveways everywhere. You have uninterrupted sidewalks, and you're saving on space, which makes these areas more walkable. Just because there's literally less distance to cover, but also because you have better sidewalk systems and all of these kind of different elements.
And that's not a new development. That is something that a lot of major cities in the U.S. already have, where you park behind the development.
Right.
I mean, you go to Chicago, and there's so many areas where there's no driveways in the front.
Right.
You drive down the alley behind and park in a garage behind your building.
A lot of similar.
Philadelphia is very similar. I can't say that for New York, because a lot of New York doesn't have alleyways, especially in Manhattan, but I'm sure in the outer boroughs it's very similar.
And a couple of like things I looked up on stats on this, just looking at it from a practical standpoint, now that you have an idea of what this place kind of looks like and feels like, you also, just on this footprint of land, I looked at the neighborhoods around the Grove, and I literally like kind of mapped out how much space does it take up. And I went through and literally hand counted the amount of single family homes, because it's all surrounded by single family homes on many sides. There are some actual apartments across the street as well, which is, again, there's benefits happening between those two apartment complexes now, but you could only fit 250 single-family homes on this plot, basically. And instead, we have 1,500 housing units. So you end up with 6 times the amount of housing units on the same property. You also get 16 acres of parks. You get businesses. You get all sorts of benefits to this. Versus if you did it with just single family homes right there.
Yeah, absolutely love that. I'm a big nerd for looking at land usage and like comparing the sizes of things. This is a slight tangent, but if you ever have a moment, look at like your municipal airport and overlay that onto like your city's core.
Yeah.
if you take the Austin International Airport and you overlay it on like downtown Austin,
Yeah.
it's the entire.
whole thing.
It's way more. It's like twice the size of downtown Austin.
Denver's is the best one to do.
Oh, Denver's an amazing one. But even in Austin, the runway at ABIA would run from the front steps of the Capitol building to Old Torf in South Austin.
Wow.
It is ridiculously long.
That's insane.
It's absolutely insane.
Yep. But yeah, I mean, clearly it's a good use of space. When we're talking about like, transit working well when there's density, this is a perfect example. Having 250 households being served by a transit line versus 6 times the amount.
Yeah.
That is 6 times the amount of potential riders of the 30 line with the bus that's right there, hopefully in time. And I mean, the 30 does have some other density happening along it and more construction and whatnot happening. It would be great to be able to see that network, which currently only runs every half an hour, which is the downside of the 30, get to a situation where it could run every 15 minutes, which might not sound like frequent for people who live in denser cities in the U.S., bigger cities in the U.S., but 15 minutes in Austin, most people are going to be pretty happy with that. Yeah. Frankly, myself included. I'd like to see it faster, but...
and once the entire development is completed, because there's still a section that hasn't been built up yet, once the entire development is completed, the opportunities for Cap Metro to increase the frequency go up, because it makes it a lot more feasible to run that line, makes it more financially feasible.
Absolutely.
And the city is also more apt to make better amenities like improved bike paths, which in that area, there's already pretty good bike paths, but...
they actually, part of a requirement, they had the Grove, the developers, pay for the bike infrastructure going in front of it, which is also a good tool to use. But
but it makes all those types of amenities more financially feasible if more people are going to be using them.
Absolutely, yeah. And when those amenities do, like when people do start to move in and whatnot too, I would say if you were to see an increase in transit service in that area, the Grove is not necessarily like close in to the city core. It's not far, like it's not a crazy distance in. But if the transit service were to improve and you have the kind of rise of people riding e-bikes, cult of e-bikes, growing in the city of Austin, I would say that is a place that would be very easy to live at the least car light, but potentially car free with an e-bike and having frequent bus service. Yeah. And that's something that I think a lot of people sleep on, the idea of like car light, having a 1-car household versus a 2-car household, and how many car trips you can eliminate with that. And the Grove, especially with the investment that they put into that bridge that's going to connect to the Shoal Creek Bike Trail, which is a bike path that essentially can connect you right into downtown, was really smart. And again, should be kind of like, it's not traditional transit, but it is transit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also want to take a step back. I don't like the fact that I called it an amenity. Okay. These things are not amenities. Amenity makes it sound like it's a bonus service that the city's throwing in out of kindness or because they can. This is actually a necessity.
Right.
Transit is absolutely a necessity. Bus service is a necessity. Sidewalks are a necessity. Bike lanes are a necessity. Mm-hmm. These are all things that your city should have.
Yeah.
And for them not having, there's no excuse to not have it.
Totally.
So I retract my statement. Not amenities, necessities.
And on that point, I think having those necessities also helps with a part of this that I want to talk about, which is affordability. Yeah. So with a lot of these new developments, to be totally real, a lot of the stuff isn't the most affordable. The single-family homes, for example, are over $1 million homes. However, with this development, we end up with a couple positive things in the affordability area. So first off, the city of Austin has like an affordability program for apartments where you essentially qualify by making under a certain amount of money, and 150 apartments at the Grove are slated for affordable apartments. So that's of the 1,500 units, 10% of it is affordable apartments. They also have 46 homes which are available for purchase at levels of around $200,000, which for Austin is absolutely unheard of.
Pretty much unheard of, yeah.
And the specific program for that is actually set aside that teachers were to get priority access for these homes, which is, I think that's a major benefit. And like, again, you can't buy a freaking empty lot with a toxic waste dump in the center of it within the city limits for $200,000, I don't think.
No.
And that's them not exaggerating. So those are two, wins on affordability. As far as, the rents otherwise go, they're not great, but they're not terrible at the same time. So we're talking, apartments for $1,800 a month. They are brand new apartments, I will say.
Yeah.
But we're talking about one-bedroom apartments for $1,800 a month. Just to give you some context, I pay $1,800 a month for an apartment closer in to the city, but it's a two-bedroom, not a one-bedroom. But it's older, and I'm splitting it two ways, so it's not perfect.
Back in my day,
yeah.
When I first moved to Austin, when I see that an apartment costs $1,800, especially a one bedroom, when I see that it costs $1,800 a month, I just cringe because one, where I'm from, apartments should never cost that much.
Yeah.
But two,
they shouldn't cost that much here either.
No.
I'm not giving them yeah.
But when I moved here in 2012, I lived. Granted, I was pretty far south in the city around William Cannon, but I moved into an 1,100 square foot apartment, 2 bedrooms. And my roommate and I collectively paid about $850 a month.
Yeah, it's nuts. That's
collectively,
insane.
I paid like $425 a month on rent, and I still struggled at that time to pay the rent.
Yeah,
but it just oh my god, it just blows my mind that $1,800 is what we consider affordable today.
Well, and we don't. I would say that we don't consider that affordable because like $1,800 is not the affordable units.
It's what I'm sorry. I'm amazed that's what a marketing or a housing
put it up there.
or a housing company considers affordable.
Yeah. To be clear, like those people who are qualifying for the affordable housing program are not paying $1,800 a month in this case, but that was kind of me saying like for a new apartment, I don't think that that's crazy. It's not good. I wouldn't pay it.
Yeah.
But it's and I mean, frankly, like that is above average in the city of Austin. Like that is the for a one bedroom, I'm not sure exactly where it is, but I know for a two bedroom, 1,800 is the median in Austin at the moment, which is like because I know that only because I'm paying the median basically. Yeah. So it's above average, but it is brand new. So who knows? And I'm curious if that comes down over time as more of their units come online. I don't think that they're going to fill those at $1,800 a month right now, given the rental market at this point.
Or as rents continue to drop a little bit,
right?
Because the rental market in Austin has been coming down
because
a little bit.
And I would say in part due to these developments all kind of coming online right now. There's been insane construction of apartments going on in and around the city for a while now.
And another good point is the Grove is very much still central Austin. Mm-hmm. So it's not really a suburb. It is its own contained development within the city of Austin. When we're talking about suburban development and sort of what Noah on Streetcraft is talking about, that's more of a true suburb, and those prices are obviously going to be lower. Yeah. So anybody who may be watching this saying, well, hey, that's a good reason why this model doesn't work for the average person. Yeah. No, it does work for the average person. It just depends on where the location of the project is.
Totally. Anyway, I do want to talk about, like, why is it important to get away from the model of the suburbs that we have today and move towards something more like what we've been discussing, but not just like in close to a city center like this example is, but even in like the more traditional suburbs, as you would say, like further out from a downtown city, basically.
Well, and I'm curious, Lewis, did you grow up in a suburb?
I did grow up in a suburb. I grew up in a suburb of Rochester. Okay. I would say that it is not as bad of a suburb as far as connectivity goes as you might see like when you're picturing like the worst of the worst, or what you might see in some of Noah's videos in Florida.
Not a Florida suburb.
Yeah, it's not a Florida suburb. I would say that the roads are pretty windy, decent sized, like, you know, yards and whatnot. But I grew up in a suburb of Rochester called Greece. I grew up in the older part of it. So the older part of it, meaning that it's a little bit more dense than the kind of newer developments of Greece, which are more cul-de-sacs and all that sort of stuff, super winding neighborhoods, but still, you know, all of the characteristics of a suburb that, you know, and the nice parts too. I mean, I grew up like literally like playing like wiffle ball in the street and like
nice,
cops and robbers and like I don't know, all sorts of other dumb games that you're playing as a kid, and like knew our neighbors and kickball, whatever it may be. But anyway, I think it is important, though, to talk about why you can still have those experiences that I had, but in an environment that is built in a more sustainable way, both environmentally, because the suburbs take up way too much space, but also financially and just like viability wise of like, can we keep doing this? We touched on the transit wise, but like it would cost so much money and be so inefficient and have poor ridership to just try to build transit through existing suburbs. You're just not gonna do it. People need to walk through weird loops to be able to get access to places. I think, unfortunately, like, we just kind of, like, there almost is no fixing some of that. There might be small things you can do on the margins, like building better pedestrian connectivity where you can, but even that is going to be hard because you're going to need to take people's land to do that. People will fight that, no doubt. So the transit element is so much easier, especially when you can develop these more dense situations where you can have one road that you make sure goes through it and everybody is within a 5-minute walk of that road. That is totally feasible when you're developing these things for the first time. So I think that's an important part of it. I think, like I mentioned, better use of the land. When you can fit 6 times the amount of housing, as in the case of the Grove, on one plot of land, that is, I mean, it makes so much sense. That helps from both the affordability end of it, because you're, 250 people buying the same place that 1,500 people could buy. Supply and demand, you should get some more affordability. Maybe not all of it. That's not a perfect situation always, but you're going to get more affordability, better economics on the city services where, maintaining roads, maintaining sewer pipes, water pipes, all this sort of stuff. I mean, the list goes on as to like why we should be incentivizing this model versus the old model. I don't know how we do it though. Yeah.
You watch Noah's video, and that tells you exactly how we do it.
Yeah. I mean, I think, he's doing really good work in trying to talk through some of these things. I would love to see more of this style development happening on the further outskirts. I don't see a lot of it, frankly, at all. But it does exist.
On the outskirts of Austin, we are getting more of it.
Are we?
Yeah, we are definitely getting more. There's a place, I think it's called Velocity is the name of the development, but we're building a small development out just past the airport.
Okay.
Where 45 and 183 meet. We're completely redeveloping this large 1970s or 60s era shopping center in South Austin. Into a big mixed use. It's not going to have single family homes necessarily.
That's the one, Lamar, right?
Yeah, Lamar. Yeah. But it will have more housing options in it. Yeah. So like
we're not seeing it in the suburbs, though, is what I'm saying. I'm not like I get nervous. Where I'm saying I think some of this stuff would start to make more sense is like in the endless sprawl as far as the eye can see when you head out towards like on the road out towards Dripping Springs in Southwest Austin, where you just see rolling hills of single family homes under construction. And like there is no undoing that.
Right.
Like those people will all 100% get in a car, drive through their maze of a neighborhood, get onto 290, sit in traffic there, clog traffic coming into the city, and like you run into so many transit nightmares with that because you can't, there is no fixing that.
Yeah.
You are not going to be able to serve those people by transit. They are too far out to have an e-bike even to come in. Like there's no undoing that, and those are the areas that you could serve by transit if they were built in more dense core city service areas, and that is not happening, I don't think.
Yeah, I don't think all hope is lost. I think there's opportunities to fix them in the future, but it's not, as you say, maybe it's not happening right now.
Yeah, well, are you seeing any of these sorts of developments pop up near you, whether they're kind of more in your city, further out? Do you like them? Do you not like them? I think there's pros and cons to all of them. I think done well, they can be really nice. Done poorly, they can be soulless places.
Yeah.
The Grove is still partly under construction from riding around it a little bit yesterday. I think I generally like what I'm seeing. Is it perfect? No. Are there parts of it that probably feel a little soulless? Yeah, if I'm being real. But I think doing what we're doing now is a recipe for disaster, a recipe for more traffic, a recipe for a worse environment. And all sorts of other things that we outlined here. So,
absolutely agree.
Anyway, and with that, thank you all so much for watching. We really appreciate it, and enjoy the rest of your Transit Tangent Tuesday.
I'm saving that dough. Public transit's where it's at. Watch me go.